Hi everyone, I'm Madeline Park, stylist and vintage fashion hound. I believe everything has a story, whether it be clothes or the people that wear them. For season 2 of Style Stories, I want to get out of the house, but find a place where I still felt at home, like Lucio's, the iconic Italian restaurant known for its colour and charm. My guests tip their hat to Lucio's by seasoning their stories with a taste of art, food and family, but always bringing to the table their unique sense of style. Today I'm chatting with Silvia Colloca, Italian-born food writer, TV producer and host. Silvia comes with an impressive cachet of creative titles, which also include opera singer and actress. However, her recipe for self-expression is simple, and like her cooking, aims to honour the core ingredients. Silvia was raised in Milan, but it's her more humble Abruzzo roots that define her understated sensuality, her serious humour, and her unadorned passion. And it's this delicious mix of contrasting ingredients that makes Silvia's style so intriguing and so enticing.
Fuel. Yes, please.
Thank you, Silvia, for coming and joining me at Lucio's today.
My pleasure.
It's such a pleasure to have you here because, like Lucio, you both have strong homage to your Italian heritage in your cooking, and you both celebrate the ingredient, but there's a fine simplicity to what you do.
Oh, thanks.
My pleasure.
In a nutshell.
Getting into it, I want to know, growing up, did you have a simple upbringing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I grew up in Milan, the last of 3 siblings, mum and dad, and my brother, my sister, and I. It was ordinary upbringing. We weren't wealthy, we weren't poor. When I was little, mum didn't used to work. She was sort of focused on raising us, so the belt was a bit tighter for sure. I remember, Dad getting second or third hand cars and us getting super excited about them. And I remember the first time Dad got a second-hand car, but had air conditioning. That was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. Because, every summer then we used to take this maiden trip down to Abruzzo where my mum was born, and we still had the little family home there. And it was a 7 hours drive, but in the heat of summer, 3 kids in the back seat, no air conditioning, not fun.
No.
Not fun. And it also had a radio, which we never had before. We used to just sing in the car, which, again, fun and then not fun.
It wouldn't necessarily last the 7-hour distance.
Hours. Yeah. So, and then my mum then started her own business, and she got really busy, and so I think I went from being raised in a family where the Italian mother was present and cooking meals, lunch and dinners, to my mum then becoming like this really power woman at her job and having this amazing career that she only started in her late 30s. And then she was working 2 jobs and started her own business. And so all of a sudden, when I was about 12, this all changed, and she became this other,
What kind of business did she have?
She first started doing consultancies for a geotechnician, and she was she's in the committee of the people that saved the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So
fantastic!
Super cool,
Yeah.
Super cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but then she started her own travel agency, and so all of a sudden we came from home cooked meals to frozen lunches coming home from school.
Yeah.
Which as teenagers. It was fine, and mum wasn't home all the time. Yay! Who's going to do homework now? Which obviously reflected in my school results for a while until I could pull my finger out. And then Saturday or Sunday lunches at the 2 grandmas. So my paternal grandma, she was from Emilia-Romagna, so she was like the gnocchi and the tortellini queen. And then my other nonna, my maternal nonna, she was from Abruzzo, and so we'd have like the polenta with sausage and homemade pasta and just simple family time, and yeah, family holidays were road trips.
Yeah.
And a lot of fighting with my siblings.
So you have a brother and a sister? Yeah. And where are you in the pecking order?
I'm the last.
You're the baby, yeah.
So, yeah, I was picked on.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, I come from a Greek background, so we, I think the cultures have an affinity to each other, but,
Definitely.
My childhood memories are also, growing up eating at my grandmother's house, but with lots of cousins around that big extended family.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up, I say that I've got 2 siblings, but really it was the 5 of us. It was also my closest, first cousins, Elena and George. We were always together.
Yeah.
My mum's middle sister's children, because we were all close in age, and it was like real chaos when we were all together. But the best family memories for me are of the 5 of us together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Milan, and Milan is, a big city, but also really well known for its fashion. How did that affect you as a child growing up in a city known for fashion?
Because as the last of 3 and as the 4th in the cousin group, I was just getting hand-me-downs.
Right, okay.
3 times over.
Yeah.
So that didn't affect me that much, sadly.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was only later in life that, when I started earning my money and I could buy myself things, and I was like, I can buy myself that. And then I look at the price tag and realized I can't buy myself that, but that's okay. But I can
aspire to
that.
Yeah,
exactly. And you start appreciating that clothing is just not something that you put on to layer up for cold Italian winter or strip down for hot Italian summer. It's a artistic form of expression as much as singing, acting, cooking.
Yeah. So
speaking of
the biscotti's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I have to dunk. I've got biscotti, I've got coffee. This is going to make the recording a bit messy, but I'm sorry.
It will just add to the ambience.
Yeah, good, crunching noises.
Yeah. If you were the recipient of the hand-me-downs, if you were right down there on the pecking order of clothing, was there anything as a child that you kind of held on to that you kind of feel like started to shape?
Anything my sister had.
Right.
I grew up with a beautiful older sister. I wanted to be her. Yeah. And anything she had, or anything she wore, anything she said was like, that's the standard. So,
right.
Yeah.
Is she creative as well?
No. She's like, she at some point in her life she thought she was going to become a scientist. That sort of never happened, but that's where her mind is. Right. She's got an analytical, pragmatic mind. Like, we could not be more different if we tried.
Yes.
We look similar, but that's where it ends.
Do you think that there was, when you were kind of growing up as a teenager and you were trying to identify yourself, that you kind of departed from looking up to her and finding the arts?
No, I don't think that was at play, because I just from the get-go, from anyone can remember, the earliest memories of me is me just performing in the house. Yeah. I just could not shut up. Apparently, that's what my mum says. We could not switch you off. It was like, you were so lovely and so chatty all the time.
Yeah, always singing.
Yeah, just always everything. Performing. And so it was like, too much.
Yeah.
It's a bit too much. That's the note.
You actually described yourself like your husband's coffee machine at home.
Temperamental.
Italian and temperamental. I'd like to think of it as passionate.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. He makes good coffee.
Yeah.
So the end result
must be appreciated.
Great.
Yes.
And nurtured.
Yes,
definitely.
Was it a passionate household that you grew up in? Like, were you?
Yes. Look, it was very vocally, very passionate. The arguments between mum and dad, everyone could hear in the neighbourhood, but everyone could hear everybody else's arguments. I think this is just how Italians express themselves. And the thing is, we just get it out of our chest. Yeah. And then there's like doom and gloom for a bit, and then it's dinner time again, and everybody sits down at the table, and it's like, oh, this is really yummy.
Well, food solves lots of problems, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes. So that's an adjustment I had to make when I moved away from the Mediterranean culture, where it's like, ooh, I can't say that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can, but
it might cause a few
it might be a bit much.
Yeah. So as a teenager, you're obviously, your sense of passion and your kind of desire to perform, it's been there from a child. But you're obviously a trained opera singer and an actress. When did you kind of find those arts in yourself? And
well, look, I always wanted to do that, but then I think it was I first started with the acting. Mum and Dad were very supportive, and so they enrolled me into acting school quite early on, and then I started doing voice training there. And I remember one of the music teachers suggesting, "Oh, you might just need to get like proper vocal coaching. You've got like there's an instrument in there I'm not super qualified for."
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and my more professional, sort of qualified singing teacher at the time thought, have you ever thought of doing opera? And I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
I've never been to one. I don't.
It wasn't part of
like,
how
I
you
listen to Metallica. What are you talking about? And it's like, but because it was the most, it was the most extreme thing they could ever throw at me. I'm like, I'm gonna have a red hot go.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I did, the 5-year singing course in Milan, and yes, and it was true. There was an operatic voice in there, and it still is, but it's not like it's there dormant. They have to keep it trained, otherwise it goes away like muscle mass. You kind of have to keep. It's
practicing.
an instrument that if you don't practice, it just gets rusty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have this contrast of being a teenager that liked Metallica to someone studying a classical instrument, as you say. How did that kind of change you, or did you culturally did you start to shift other things?
It's funny because because I came to music, a lot of people discover music earlier on in their lives, and they either learn an instrument when they're young, or start singing lessons a lot younger. I think I was about 22 at the time. I had already started another a teaching degree at the time. And so I let that one go and switched to music. But I had zero training. I had never done it before. So I had to learn all of it at that age, which is it's like learning a second language when you're not a child. But I was definitely very determined. And what it did, it made me really obsessive about music, because when you discover a new passion, that's probably something that happens to most people. And I remember there was a time when I was 2 or 3 years into my music learning, that any sound I would hear, like the train whistling past, or like the bus, I would break it down into musical notes, and it was like, oh god, this is a bit much, this is so intense. But going back to like heavy metal and stuff, I started appreciating the fact that those musicians know a lot more about music and composition than we give them credit for, and some of those scores, like some of those songs play out, are built as proper scores and have a big operatic feel to them, and some of them have been performed by big orchestras as well. So look, it's just music. Those are the notes. You do whatever you want with them.
But it's obviously a very passionate, expressive form.
And it's loud, and opera singing is really loud as well. So
and deep, and I guess it's very performance based, and
that's true.
It's heavily costumed, as anything you do in the acting world.
I suppose traditional presentational operatic performances are. There's new trends happening these days, and it's a lot more fashion forward. I mean, I did an opera a few years ago here in Sydney where the costumes were by age.
Oh, right. What you're wearing is your vintage item today. Yes. Oh, that's excellent. What opera was that? Sorry.
Orpheus and Eurydice.
Right,
Like,
okay.
look,
Yeah, and so what were your costumes like?
So beautiful. I was wearing like this long black floor-length skirt and this beautiful crisp white shirt, and I was this mourning widow traveling into the underworld to rescue my lover.
Yeah.
The story of Orpheus and Eurydice is really tragic because Eurydice dies, and Orpheus travels into the underworld and strikes a pact with the gatekeeper, saying, okay, you can go back and find your lover, but you cannot look at her and you cannot tell her why you can't look at her.
Right.
And so it's this passionate love, and Orpheus travels back into the underworld and fights off all the mean spirits and all the the monsters, and finally finds his beautiful wife, or her beautiful wife in our case, and he can't look at her. And she's like, why can't you look at me? And so there's this like really animated argument in Italian, because the opera is in Italian, which is like, why aren't you looking at me? I mean, I've been dead.
Yeah.
Now I'm speaking to you, and you give me your shoulders. And it's like, and then in the end, it's like he's so tormented. I should say she, because in that production, we decided to keep them both female.
Yeah.
She's so tormented. It's like, I'm driven crazy. And she turns around, and of course, then Eurydice dies for good.
Right.
It's like, oh, what? What have I done? It's your fault. So the costumes were really beautiful and dramatic, but also really kept... they weren't taking over from she music, you know what I mean? They were really balanced. And I mean, Eurydice was played by Catherine Bouchier. She's like this 6-foot goddess with long curly hair, and she was wearing like a gold dress, floor-length gold dress. So, and yet the singing and the music wasn't overpowered by that beauty.
Right. So obviously, the passion that you feel in the roles that you play, like you mentioned, kind of seemed to feed into how you present yourself. You come across as a beautifully passionate person. Do you find that when you are in costume that starts to then impact you as much as maybe the emotional kind of component of taking on a role?
It does help.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. There's something, and I don't know if all performers feel this way, but I know a lot of them do, where you start building your character in the makeup room and in the costume room, because you start building the outer. You work on the inside, and then you start seeing the outer layers as well, and then they all combine, and it gives you like a different posture as well. I mean, singing opera in trainers and singing it in heels, it's a bit different. Yeah.
So given that, given you met your husband on set, dressed as Dracula's wife, him being Dracula, do you think, being in character, being in your costume helped ignite the fire between you?
Well, because we actually met at the read-through of the screenplay, so we were not in costume. We were in sort of civilian outfits, not looking
in
like
mufti,
vampires. Mufti day. And I knew him from Moulin Rouge.
Oh,
and so I expected him to look like Duke from Moulin Rouge. Yeah. He doesn't. He didn't. And so I walk into this room full of really attractive people, Hugh Jackman, Dave Wenham, and then this guy comes smiling at me, and I'm like... And one of my other female colleagues spotted it straight away, and she said, like, oh, you fancy him? And I'm like, don't be stupid. That's ridiculous. And I did. It was like that smile that he gave me, and I also thought, oh, he doesn't look like the Duke from Moulin Rouge. That was makeup. Yeah, I was quite young. And then it was actually really hilarious to see him in costume and for him to see me in costume because, when we weren't even dating at the time, it took us quite a while to start dating. It was a long shoot, luckily.
Yeah.
But yes, it was quite hilarious. Good role play.
Yeah. And so you've obviously had a long, successful marriage, but I assume your marriage is part of what's brought you to Australia.
It is essentially what has brought me here. Yeah.
Yeah. But you had fantasies of Australia as a young girl, is that right?
I did. When I was little, I used to watch this cartoon. It was a Japanese cartoon that was really popular in Italy at the time, in the 80s, and it was called Lucy May, and it was about this English girl that, back in the days with the first settlers that migrated to Australia with her family and how, they rebuilt their lives in Australia. And I was so fascinated. And it was one of those cartoons that went on forever. It was like big soap opera saga of a cartoon, and everybody watched it in Italy and at school, and we used to collect like trading cards and everything, and I remember thinking, I want to go to Australia and have have my own strawberry farm and play with kangaroos and have a dingo pup, because that's what you do when you live in Australia.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. So you moved here in 2009, is that right?
Yeah, permanently. Yeah, how we'd come in and out if Richard had work and for Christmas and to be with his family and stuff. But we were mainly located in the UK.
Okay.
And then when the GFC hit, and we just had to basically run away quickly.
Yeah.
And so and then all of a sudden I was Lucy May, and I had to make my life here.
So you've gone from being in, Milan and London, and I assume travelling throughout.
Well, I'm also close to my family.
Yeah.
And all my friends.
Yeah.
To having to, be in a completely new continent, so far away. And with no network of my own, apart from one child that I had and my husband. And, obviously I had his family, and he sort of gave me his friends and said, here, there you go. Yeah. But then, it's not like you inherit, a bunch of people and off you go. You have to nurture friendships, and you have to build your own. And I had to rebuild all my work networks as well, because, I was working in the UK and in Europe and in the US, and all of a sudden I was here and no one knew me, and I was, someone's wife, and it was like, didn't even think of that. So I just had to literally knock at everybody's door and saying, hi, you don't know me, but this is what I'd like to do. And
you're a new mum,
And I was a new mum, and I was a bit isolated. And then soon after we relocated, I was pregnant with my second child as well. So it was it was isolating for sure.
And also the cities that you've lived in, they're cities that you go out a lot. You're very social. They're big cities that are late night cities that are happening, and coming to Sydney, there's probably an adjustment in terms of that kind of outside lifestyle, like that lifestyle outside of your home.
Yeah,
becomes
there is, and
more
especially
about
because when you have a young child as well, because things change, and you make adjustments because you want to, and I don't want to give the false impression that you have a child and your life as you know it is over. You kind of want to be with your child. It's great.
Yes,
it's a great thing to do, but obviously if you don't have your network of people that support you, then it can become really lonely. And Richard was quite busy with work when we got back, which was lucky, but it also meant that I was on my own a lot.
Yeah. So did you find, in part of that kind of cultural shift of moving to Australia, that in terms of how you represented yourself, did that change? Did you start to kind of style yourself differently, wear different clothes as a...
Well, definitely the climate was more... was milder, throughout the seasons. I mean, I complain about Sydney winter because I like to complain about Sydney winter, but really, I mean... Come on.
But you've experienced much colder than this.
Yeah,
look,
snowy winters, and so that's yes, definitely.
But is it the lack of distinct season that you you kind of miss, or is it?
Oh no, I don't
you
miss
just got
winter.
so used to
I
the
don't
heat.
miss winter.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could actually move to Queensland.
Yeah.
Yeah, easy.
So, but do you wear like, you know, there is a certain aesthetic. I having lived in London and New York myself, I know that I loved living in those cities partly because I could just get dressed as
You dress up a bit more.
dress
Yeah,
up.
I feel like I can dress down in Sydney, and
Do you like that?
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
enjoy that?
yeah, it's simple. It's,
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you don't have to look after what you're wearing, but you just it's just a bit less curated, I suppose. It's a bit more spontaneous and practical, and I do like my jeans and singlet scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a sensuality to the way that you address food, right? You've said that that your cooking is like a love letter to the ingredients.
Yeah, I could say that.
Do you find that you bring that sensuality and intimacy into how you represent yourself and what you wear?
I never thought of it, but I suppose because if I want to compare it to my cooking is very simple, and it's quite, it's all based around essential ingredients and simple techniques, and just putting very few things together that go so well together, and that you don't have to add anything to disguise what's there.
Yeah.
And so I would say that, yes, probably that's
Your wardrobe's the same.
That's so I went out Saturday night and had a big night out, and also because I've got quite strong features, so I don't like to over accessorize myself, because otherwise there's just a bit too much of me. There's like all the hair, the eyebrows.
I don't think there could be too much.
So I just found that I was wearing a black dress and boots. I had no jewelry. I had one like thin bangle, no rings. I have no earrings.
Yeah.
And just lips. Yeah. And that's enough.
Yeah.
But I do admire people that can really carry the accessories. I'm just not good at it as well, so I would make a mess of it. Yeah.
So going back to how you got into food, you came to Australia, you were a mum at home, and you were seeking a creative outlet, and it was actually your mum that suggested you do a food blog, which at the time would have been quite a progressive kind of thing for a mum to suggest to a daughter.
Especially for an Italian mum.
Yeah.
But, my mum is very progressive,
Yeah.
as I was telling you before. So I think she could tell that I was, getting a bit like angsty. And, And by that time, I'd had my second baby, and he was like an angel baby, and Rafi was at daycare a few days a week, and I was really just getting a bit bored. And she said, everybody's got a food blog these days. And I'm like, okay, so I just have to learn how to write in English, and I take photos, and no biggie.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, it was really basic, and I just used it as an archive of the family recipes, to be honest. And then it was only, a few months in, and people were sort of commenting, and I'm like, oh, people are reading this, I better do spell checks and buy a camera.
Yeah.
And to some reasons that are still a mystery to me, the algorithm made it possible that it was visible a lot, and people found it, and publishers found it.
Yeah.
And so I got a book deal, and then kind of really quickly snowballed from there. And I realized after the first book, which I thought was, okay, so I'm now writing a cookbook and that's it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to be a one-off. There was going to be like a second book and a first show, and then columns on magazines. And it was like, oh, hang on, I think I'm given a chance at a career here. And so I took it really seriously.
Yeah. So your mum is a progressive thinker, and obviously in terms of food, you've borrowed from your mum's and your grandmother's cooking. Is that correct?
It is correct. And my brother, who's a trained chef.
Yeah. So in terms of like that heritage of style, have you borrowed the way you represent yourself from your mum or your grandmother?
Yeah, I think so. My paternal grandma died when I was a teenager, and I was, too into myself to appreciate her food legacy. And so I never learned to do the food that she used to cook for us. I mean, I've tried since, obviously, to replicate those flavors, but to be honest,
you have to watch those women, don't you?
Yeah, it's a different set of skills that, those hands, it's just different. But with my maternal nonna, because she was terminally ill, and I was that bit older, and I said to her, if you can, let's just spend a few days in your kitchen and teach me everything you know. And she did.
Yes.
And she did. So we had all these consecutive family dinners for a series of days where, we just cooked all of Nonna's best dishes.
Yeah. How long ago was this?
This was, would have been the late 90s. That's when she died.
Yeah. So you would have still been quite young
I was
that on board.
I was probably 21, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah, 21, 22, I would say. So definitely old enough to know what was going on.
Yeah.
And that because everybody in my family loved her cook. And her cooking was so simple.
Yes.
Like unadorned, just slopped on the plate with no micro herbs, no fancy anything, no edible flowers, no foams. Like, what you see is what you get, but what you get is like a cuddle from heaven.
Yeah.
And so everybody was very happy that she passed on the legacy, because then, we can still enjoy those meals. Yeah. It's that there's some, not to quite the same extent, it's just different, but because it's not her hands making it. But, sometimes you just feel like when you're making a recipe that belonged to someone you love that's not there anymore, and it just makes you time travel again, or it conjures up that person into, your kitchen. It's always a beautiful thing.
I can 100% relate to that. My grandmother was the cook in my family, but my mum was known for making a spinach pie, spanakopita.
Oh, yum.
And people would get her to make it. But my mum was a very technical cook, so everything was very precise and organised. My grandmother was the cook that through all the love and the heart and soul, with
a bit rough around the edges.
A bit rough around the edges, but no recipe, no following of anything. It was all just a feeling,
bit of this, bit of that.
Exactly. But my mum's since passed, and one of the things I had to make sure I needed to get from her before she went, knowing she was very sick, was her spanakopita recipe. And I really do feel what you're saying every time I cook
make it.
The smells, because that's the thing I know of her cooking is that smell. It encapsulates her, and it's a really nice thing for me now to have, because I feel like
to be able to pass it on to your children.
Yeah, because my daughter, both my kids love it, and they know that that was their grandmother who they never got to meet. That was her.
Right.
Yes. So she had, anyway, that's a long story, but they never got to meet her. But I guess like yourself, I have enjoyed passing on my heritage to my kids through food. But I also know style-wise, I'm very much like, borrowing from images of my mother and my grandmother growing up.
But I'm sure you would make it look super pretty.
My food?
Yeah.
No, my food.
Really?
My food is very, very Mediterranean. That there's no
abundant,
fuss.
but rough around the edges.
Oh,
Nice.
I can do a beautiful cheese platter, and I can dress a table like nothing else. But my food is heart and soul. I would feel like
That's perfect. I want
there
to
is
come
more.
to that dinner party.
I'd like to come to yours first. But yeah, getting back to the style part, you had these beautiful Milanese women in your life. Did they kind of represent all that Milan women kind of tend to conjure up as an image, or?
Well, not really, in the sense that no one in my family was originally from Milan.
Okay.
So my mum's family was from Abruzzo. And so although both my mum and a middle sister were basically brought up in Milan, mum was, I think, 12 when the family moved to Milan, and my auntie was probably 5 or 6. So they were brought up here, but they were Abruzzese. They are. Well, my auntie since passed, sadly, but they're fierce Abruzzese
And
women.
what does that mean? What does it mean to
You don't want to mess with them.
Is it
They
kind
will
of the
take
same
you-
Sicilian kind of connotation?
It's a proud quietness that,
Right.
you know, they'll give you the still eye and you'll die in the inside because you don't know what you've done,
Yeah.
but you've done something, all right? So it's the icy stare that only Abruzzese women can master that well. There's a
Have you got that down pat?
I'm working on
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I'm working on it. But, you know, Abruzzesi are known to be forte e gentile, strong and gentle.
Okay.
And I think those two qualities really inhabit in the women of Abruzzo. They will take down a bear if
Yeah.
they had to.
Yeah.
And there's bears in those mountains.
Yeah.
So I'm saying
They probably did.
probably have.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because their younger sister, Barbara, she was born and raised in Milan.
Right.
And so her upbringing was very different from my aunt's and my mum's. And she's more of a Milanese woman
Right. Okay.
than my mum and my auntie.
Yeah.
Are or were.
Yes.
Yeah, and then from my dad's side, my nonna was from Emilia Romagna, and it was just a completely different culture, and it's all completely centered around food and
Right.
the abundance of it, and
Yeah.
it's the land of Parmigiano, prosciutto, tortellini, all the things.
So how you represent yourself is less important than the food that you put on the
Definitely,
table.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you obviously, you know, your food carries so much of who you are. If there was a particular recipe that you would say defined you and your style, what would it be?
God, I better pick a good one. This is so hard. You know what? I'd say it's probably bread.
Yeah.
Because what you see is what you get. And, you know, you can pretty it up, you know, you can doll it up and
Yeah.
do all the curling and putting all the makeup, you
Yeah.
know, by putting, you know, olives or nuts or seeds on top and stuff. But what you get is something that intrinsically is simple and that, you know, just wants to be loved, which is me. I just want to be loved. I'm a Leo, so I just want people to really
My
like me.
daughter's a Leo.
You know what we're
Yeah,
like. We're
yes.
so like terrible with that stuff, and we need nurture.
Yeah.
It's that bread baking is a simple enough process,
Yeah.
but if you don't give it love, it doesn't rise.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much.
That's a beautiful
who I am,
analogy.
yeah.
That's great. So what is cooking for you now? What's on the plate for projects at the moment?
Well, I've just finished writing my 5th book.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, talk about, you know, going back to the blog. I know, it's crazy. And I will start filming the next season of my cooking show.
So what's
Cook Like an Italian season 2
right.
very soon. Yeah.
And the cookbook is
And the cookbook I can't disclose
right.
much
Yeah.
yet, but it'll come out next year.
Yeah. And do you love filming?
Yes, I do. Especially with this show because we keep the crew really tight because we film at my house,
Right.
which is a great idea in theory, but also it's like, oh my God, you guys are still here.
Yeah.
Get out of my house. You know? But we all really get along and we never have to order out because we just eat whatever we cook.
Yeah,
And we
great.
set out an outdoor kitchen in the garage area. So we've got a small team of people that do some of the prepping there, and so it's just and then a lot of the times my friends who participate as guests, they stay on and then they start cooking for us, and it's literally like an extended version of the show that we wish we could fit in the 30-minute format we've got, but
Yeah.
because the behind the scenes is really
That's
delicious.
the best bit.
Yeah. Everybody tucking in at the end. And mind you, with COVID, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. We'll probably have to set up
Where there's a
individual
will,
plates.
there's a way, I'm
We'll
sure.
find a way.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. So moving forward, you were just talking about your Saturday night out and, you know, the simplicity of what you wore. And I did see your Instagram post and you wrote on your Instagram, as you're getting older, the skirts are getting shorter.
Yes.
And who could blame you with those legs?
I had a moment of vanity.
Oh, did not.
I don't do that very often, but I did like that dress.
It looked amazing on you.
But you see my point with,
Yeah.
the hair is a big thing, and that's like you have to keep the dress minimal.
Yeah.
That was too minimal in the sense that there wasn't much of it, but I didn't put, necklaces or anything.
What do you see your 70-year-old self dressing like?
I was having this conversation with my husband a while back saying, I just want to be those people in a room full of other people where we know what we're up to.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah.
We're cool. We still do all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
But that's where, hopefully.
And how do you see yourself dressing at that stage of your life?
Well, maybe the skirt, not that shirt.
Not that short?
I you know what? I don't know, because, I remember when I turned 30 and I thought, oh, okay. Because when I was 20, the idea of turning 30 was like,
so old.
Everything is going to go pear-shaped. And then I remember turning 40 and thinking, oh, God. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think age is just another label that they've slapped upon us, and we
Yeah.
have to deal with it because people want to box us, and so it's like, oh, this is your next stage in life because you are this age or you're that age or you're too young for that. Says who? You know what I mean? It's like, So 70, there's some guys in their 70s who train at CrossFit with me.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Age is definitely not a number for those guys.
Well, let's hope you're still wearing your miniskirts.
Exactly.
Sylvia, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your style story with me. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
In the world of food, Silvia is celebrated for her unfussy, approachable cooking that honours her rich Italian heritage while aiming to please and made to be loved. This style's not reserved for the kitchen, and Silvia offers these tempting qualities to both her personal manner and her understated wardrobe. And while she likes to keep things simple, her warmth, humour and creativity are peppered with a deep passion for who she is, what she does and where she's from. This passion is the core ingredient that makes her sizzle, and it's simply Silvia's style to share the joy, break the bread and bring everyone around the table.